Welcome to Just the Who of Us, hosted by Rhea Higgs. This is a space for honest, thoughtful conversations around mental health, life journeys, holistic wellnesses, and the experiences that shape who we are. Take a breath, settle in, and join Rhea and today's guests as we explore the stories that connect us.
Welcome back to Just the Who of Us. Today we have Dr. Eleanor Haspel-Portner. Thank you so much for being here.
So let's start off kind of getting to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about who you are and we will dive into what brought you to the work that you do today.
Well, my first memory is of seeing auras. And I was always looking at how people treated each other. And I couldn't really understand that when people weren't nice to each other. It bothered me. And I my childhood was not easy. I was the youngest of five. My older siblings, two of them were much older, 17 years and 16 years, and then a sister 11 years, and then a sister 2.5 years. My brother was 16 years older than me, and he was a tease and mean. He was mean. He would tease me and chase me and challenge me. I'd say it made me stronger. And when I talked to my next older sister about our childhood, you'd think we grew up in completely different homes. Um, and my mother was responsive, I think is the right word. When I didn't want to change my class from first to second grade, she went to bat for me and got me to stay with the same teacher. When I didn't like my third grade teacher, she went into the school and had my class changed. So, on a lot of levels, she was tuned in, and I always felt like I was safe with my mother.
That's
But
great.
on other levels, she was not tuned in. So I worked really hard. I was always teacher's pet. I always did my homework. I was very exacting. I loved penmanship, and I practiced it for hours. And every paper I did had to be perfect. And I still feel to some degree the same way. I want my materials to be beautiful. I want them to be accurate. And anyhow, when I got to college, my father died when I was 15, and I was just 15. And it
Wow.
was really, really hard because I didn't know if my mother died, if I'd have anywhere to live. And it was terrifying. So that I remember being very devastated and also deciding that I had to get through it. And when I got into college, I stayed and went to a local college because I didn't want to leave my mother alone. And I studied all the time. Um, when I took psychology, it was so easy for me. It felt like coming home. It felt like I already knew everything. I'd already read Jung as a teenager and decided I wanted to be a Jungian analyst. And psychology just, I didn't have to study it, I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like coming home. So when I graduated, I decided I knew from early childhood that I needed a PhD in order to be credible because I was psychic. And I knew that woo-woo stuff was ungrounded and nobody would take me seriously. So I decided I needed to get a PhD. I needed to have credibility and be able, in order to do whatever it is I was going to end up doing.
Hmm.
And I never wanted to work. I never wanted a job. My mother would always say, my brother would say, she should get a job. Why doesn't she work? And my mother would say, leave her alone. Let her do her thing her own way.
Mm.
And I got into University of Chicago. My older sister, my 11-year-old older sister, who had given me Jung to read and The Little Prince to read when I was 11, and she touched my soul. I always say I owe my soul to my sister Sandra because
Oh.
she introduced me to psychology, she introduced me to dreams, she introduced me to Jung, and she also got a PhD from the University of Chicago.
Mm.
So I applied to a department that was the first integrated social science department in the world. Psychology, biology, sociology, and anthropology, the four worlds.
Yeah.
I didn't know it, but I studied with the best teachers in the world. Um, Larry Kohlberg, Bruno Bettelheim, Kubler-Ross, Bernice Newgarten, people who were at the cutting edge of
Hmm.
psychology. And I got married when I was 20. Um, I divorced my first husband. Uh, we were married, we were together for 8 years. So um, it during graduate school, we were both in good shape. We were good for each other. We supported each other. He took an internship. He was an MD. He took an internship in New York, and my PhD was in Chicago. So I went to my chairman and I said, what do I do? And he said, we'll let you do your PhD wherever you are.
Oh, wow.
You can take the rest of your classes as independent study and we'll support you.
Wow.
So um, I managed to get back to Chicago after a year being away. And at that point, I had a baby. And I, in order to get back, my husband said, you'll have to teach because we can't afford it. So I got a job teaching college. And I did that for 3 years. And I hated it. It was not creative. And it was what really determined for me that I couldn't be a researcher and teach. I didn't want to be in a situation, especially at the point I finished my PhD, I had two babies, and my children are less than a year apart. So by choice.
Hmm.
And I was a developmental psychologist. But when my 2-year-old was having a tantrum, I didn't know what to do.
Uh-huh.
And so I realized that the field of psychology did not give me the skills to be protecting my children's soul in the real
Mm.
world. And I couldn't bring up children without honoring who they were. So I studied. I started studying. And I studied with Tom Gordon and became the organizational training instructor for parent effectiveness training and organizational training. And it gave me skills for knowing how to deal with my children in the mental waking world, how to communicate with them in very practical mental world ways.
Right.
And I already knew how to talk to their soul because I could see their energy. And I didn't want to condition out that they could see energy and auras. And so I would say to them, what color is that person? What kind of animal does that person remind you of? And we talked a language of spirit in my home. And as I got my license as a clinician, I did a postdoc, and I began to realize, even at that point, that there were four worlds, and that talking to a patient on a soul level was different than talking to them about what they were going to do in the world. And so it became very clear to me as a clinician through the years that number one, I couldn't be a regular psychologist talking about pathology. And I never wanted to use the DSM and label people because I thought when you label someone, you limit them. So I
Yeah.
refused. Most of my practice was pay for service. I didn't bill insurance for the most part. And I dealt with people. I did groups for 10 years, every 6 weeks, for 3 days. And it was using music, using meditation. I began because I was beginning to have, well, in 1974, shortly after I divorced my husband and started meditating using transcendental meditation, I had my first big Kundalini experience, direct experience of God and reincarnation and what relationships were about. And it changed my life. I came out of that experience and wrote an outline for a book on divorce
Mm.
and got a contract back in the mail from a publisher.
Wow.
So I wrote that book, first book I published, called Marriage in Trouble, A Time of Decision. I'm about to redo it and update it and re-release it. But I,
Okay.
at this point, have 10 bestsellers,
Wow.
um, mostly on my work with human design and the science of it. It turns out to be a very faulty, incomplete system that disempowers people because
Mm.
it only looks at the mental world.
Yeah.
And the noble energy maps that I developed subsequent to that, based on the science of 45,000 cases statistically, I realized we live in four worlds. Mental, which is where most of psychology lives.
Right.
But
Right.
75% of us is living in the emotional angelic world, the world of creative intelligence, the world where we can say, wait a minute, that's not right.
Right.
This is where I am. And that's soul, that's spirit, that's
Hmm.
bringing the mental world to a higher octave of creative and emotional intelligence where we can project compassion and love no matter what is going on,
Right.
because we're all human and we're all in a body to be conscious, and
Hmm.
we're not. You
Right.
know, if
Right.
we're in the flesh, we're here to learn. And so through my clinical practice and the work with the Tree of Life, I've studied for 20 years, astrology that I studied multiple systems, including having a mentor astrologer, Catherine DeJersey, who was my best friend in my life. And I wanted to learn her astrology secrets because she was so accurate. So I studied astrology to be adept enough to ask her questions to learn her secrets, which I did. So I studied astrology. I studied the Tree of Life. I studied imago therapy, clean language, Gutman, Gottman, um, Masters and Johnson, um, and multiple gurus, transcendental meditation. I went to India to Osho's ashram, where I met my husband, at the day and time that my mentor astrologer, Katie, told me I'd meet someone in India,
Wow.
right? And we
Right.
lived less than a mile away from each other in the Palisades, and we'd never
Wow.
met. So Marvin and I have been together for 42 years now.
Congratulations.
And we worked together in the groups I was doing. He's an MD and holistic. So we began to really explore all dimensions of consciousness. And what I discovered is that each world has its own form of communication. So when I'm talking to someone and they're talking and I'm listening to the soul, I'm going to use language that doesn't use visual, auditory, or kinesthetic cues.
Yeah.
So many coaches say, what does that look like? Well, if you're not a visual person, you're
Right.
not going to know what it looks like.
Right.
And it's much more empowering to say to somebody, given that, what do you know about it now?
Mm.
It
Yeah.
turns the person inward. If you're in an argument with someone, look at them and say to them, given all of this, what would you like to have happen now?
Yeah.
Stops it dead cold.
Yeah.
So what where I came full circle was to realize that consciousness is multidimensional and that each world is unique in itself. And as humans, we live in all those dimensions. And the field of psychology is only dealing with 25%. So we're doing a great disservice to people
Yeah.
when we talk to them in a limited way,
Right.
using limited language, and not giving them the opportunity to speak from their soul. So in my work, I am especially focused on the soul and empowering people to use the right skill for the right world at the right time. And in order to do that, I also have noble energy maps, which are an expansion of the human design system, which has become a cult and is not an accurate system. I have the science to prove it. The noble energy maps shows that a baby at 3 months of age is designed to reach their full potential. And they are designed to live in all four worlds and then integrate as a conscious being. Um, many people, many people are energy sensitive.
Mm,
and they don't know it.
yeah.
So if they come in contact with someone and that person is upset, they may feel upset.
Yes.
Or, for example, my husband feels it in his body.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody has a headache, he'll have a headache. If
Oh,
someone has a
wow.
stomach ache, he'll feel a pain in his gut.
Yeah.
So a lot of my work is about helping people recognize that their consciousness is not limited
Mm,
and they are not limited, and to open to who they really are. And the line that I always use that my clients love is this: when you know what you know, and no one can tell you you don't know, you're not stubborn, you're not selfish, you are in alignment. Do not compromise.
wow. Yeah.
You get it,
I
clearly.
get it. I get it. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, a lot of what you said is interesting, but there's a couple things that stuck out to me um when you mention people feeling energy. I, I can be like that in a lot of instances. And interestingly enough, my husband took him a while, but he's kind of figured out how to not control or change, but how to kind of navigate that when I'm very like I'm absorbing this emotion and now it's like seeping through me. He's kind of figured out how to kind of get my attention. Say, hey, what are you feeling? What's going on right now? And I think in the beginning of our marriage and if possibly, all of my relationships, that hasn't always been the case, and I think for a lot of people, that's not the case.
Exactly.
This
They
one
don't even
person,
know that that's going on.
right, right. This one person is feeling all this energy, and the other person is just kind of like, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? Or if they even acknowledge there's anything going on within that person to say, hey, acknowledge it. I think a lot of people kind of take it and they take it as that person kind of taking that energy
Well,
and directing it toward them.
it's especially tricky with children
Right.
because if you have a child, um, actually, with my grandchildren, I've always done their charts the moment they're born. And so um, I could see the difference.
Hmm.
And um, I remember when my son's first child was born, and I looked at her chart when I got home, and I called him at the hospital and I said, well, she's a force to contend with. For parents, so many children, like with my granddaughter, um, she's very strong, but she's also extremely sensitive on the
Hmm.
inner plane. And so teaching parents how to receive the child's input
Yeah.
rather than imposing something on them
Right.
makes such a world of difference in the self-esteem,
Hmm.
the self um, empowerment of the child, the
Yeah.
ability to express what's going on.
Right.
And with my with my grandson, um, who was my first grandchild, um, when he was a preemie, and I didn't know what to expect from a preemie.
Right.
And he was on my floor in my office, and he's going around looking like this. And I'm beginning to get really worried. because he wasn't looking at me, he wasn't smiling at me. And out of my mouth came, "Oh, you're looking at the energy."
Oh, yeah.
And he looked at me and he smiled. And I said to my daughter, "He sees energy. Don't condition it out."
Yeah.
And she knew what I was talking about because she
Right.
sees energy. So she would talk to him about it. And to this day, he can see things that nobody else can see.
Yeah.
And he loves bugs. So he can see an insect that nobody else can even notice.
Uh-huh.
Um, I guess you have some kids like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of it can be inherited.
Mm.
So if you're energy sensitive, I would
Hmm.
expect you to have children who are energy sensitive.
Yeah. I possibly two. Definitely one, but possibly two. Um, it's funny that you mentioned you and your oldest sibling are 16 years apart. My youngest and oldest sibling are uh my oldest and youngest kids are 15 years apart. He's 11 and he's 26. So, yeah. And my youngest two, they are 6 years apart. So so there's these big gaps, and you can tell.
Right,
You can tell with them also. My oldest and youngest are boys. They're 15 years apart, and they don't get along super well because you got one that's like old enough, almost old enough to be his father, if you go by how old I was when I had him. And so he's always been in this like parental kind of role.
right,
And just unintentionally, but him and my oldest daughter, they've always kind of been like the second and third parents, and
right.
inherently. And so you have this massive difference, and it's kind of like, okay, well, it can be one of two things. They can grow up being best friends, or they can grow up being, well, you're not the boss of me. And yes, I am. So I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, 100%. I have one who is, they are self-proclaimed sensitive. And I say that because it's not anything that I've said to them. It's they've said to me, "Mom, I'm sensitive." And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay. So I know how to attempt at least to approach. And, we can't control our emotions in the moment sometimes. We're like, okay, you are really like coming at me. But,
Hmm.
it has given me the perspective to say, okay, I know if I speak to her, I can be very direct with my oldest two kids. But if I'm direct with this one, she's going to feel it a little bit more. So I need to cater to, and it's important.
So you've learned instinctively to change your communication to
Right.
the world that they can receive it in
Right.
because
Yeah.
you're sensitive to the soul.
Yes. Yeah.
And not
That
all
makes sense.
parents are.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust me. You are right about that. Um, but I think, it's also something that we have to learn to understand because I wasn't necessarily like that with my older two kids. Um, it took me learning more about life and individuals and our
Well,
psychology.
you were a kid yourself when you had your kids.
Right, right. So naturally, you know, I've learned and grown a lot since,
Hmm.
you know, having children as a teenager.
Yeah. Um, but the important thing is that you've treated each one individually.
Absolutely, you have to.
Well,
You
not all
absolutely have to.
parents do.
Yeah, but my one of my greatest mentors is my older cousin. She has 7 kids. We like to have a
Wow.
lot of children in our family, obviously. I have another cousin she just had her seventh. My sister has 4. So we all have, a lot of children. And then I have a couple of cousins who have no children. So it's like one or the other. You got to have
Right.
6 or 7 or none. But one of my greatest mentors in parenting, especially, but in life also, but she has 7 and her children are all very different. We oddly, although I'm much younger than her, we had our children about the same time. They're all like a year or so apart from each other, which is crazy too. But just the way that, she kind of taught me that. I was an only child. My
Mm,
mother's only child. My father had another child, but we didn't grow up in the same house all the time. So my parenting experiences are mostly of a only child.
mhm.
And, just kind of watching my cousin, she parents her children differently. And it's something that I learned it is extremely important because no two children, you can have twins. And she has
Right.
twins, and they're completely different. One's very outspoken and friendly and social, and the other one's not. And that's okay. And it's also important to let them know that that's okay.
Hmm.
You know,
That's especially important.
right. You don't have to
To
be
let children know that who they are is okay,
right.
that they
Right.
don't have to fit a mold, and they
Yeah.
don't have to. And the other thing, of course, is school, and
Yeah.
finding the right school for the right child.
Yeah.
Um, I moved my kids around a lot.
Hmm.
Um, when we lived in Chicago, they went to the Latin school, which was a great school. Great, 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 great school. And we moved when they were in second and third grade.
Mm.
And the first year we moved, they went to a public school and they came home and they said, it's not a good school.
Mm.
So I said, okay, we'll move. So the next year we moved to Lycée Français, private school. And they came home and they said, it's not a good school. And I said, okay, we'll move. So we moved again. And we moved again. And we moved again. And we finally found a private school. And they said, this is a good school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wouldn't push them to stay in a school that they didn't think was good for them. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I had the freedom to do that.
Right.
Um, it was hard to do, but I
Right.
did it
Right.
because it felt like the right thing to do for the child.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily easy for me, but it
Yeah.
was easier for them. So, as a parent, it is especially important to be tuning into the individuality of your child. And I think that's the message
Yes.
we're giving parents here
Yeah.
is, every individual is an individual and needs to be treated as such. Unique. It's interesting. I've done thousands and thousands of noble energy maps, which are astrologically based and based on the tree of life, astrology, I Ching, developmental psychology, and esoteric theory, as well as psychological theory. And in all of the thousands of charts I've done, no two are the same.
Yeah.
So every
Right.
individual is unique. And as teachers, as coaches, as therapists, as parents, we need to talk to the uniqueness of each individual
I agree. I completely
and
agree.
and change how we communicate to attend to the needs of that person
Yes.
rather than always trying to get our own needs met.
Mm. That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah.
As a clinician, um, having done therapy for over 50 years, um, it's never when I'm in a session. I'm gone. It's
Mm-hmm.
about that other person, not
Right.
about me, not what I think, not what I feel, not anything about me. It's only about them and what they need and who they are and who they want to be. And that's being of service.
Yes.
So, those of the listeners who are service providers, it's not about you.
Mm.
It's about the person you're serving.
Very much
And
so.
to serve that person in the interest of what that person needs,
Mm-hmm.
not in the interest of what you think they might need.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful statement, though. And I think sometimes for professionals, it's difficult to kind of to see that because we go into this at times thinking, okay, this is what's going on in this person's life. This is what they need to do to change it, and blah blah blah. But it's extremely important that we listen to the person. They're telling us what they need through the way they're communicating with us.
Plus, in someone like yourself who picks up energy, I may be reading an energy that you've picked up
Mm,
that isn't congruent with who you really are.
right,
And so the first task would be to tune into what do you need? What do
right.
you want? What do you know about your state of being
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
I would make any judgment
Well,
about
and
what you need or want?
yeah. And in parenting too, because sometimes we go into conversations with our kids with our own emotions. And then we feel that they're directing the emotions at us that we're already feeling, and it has nothing to do with them.
Right.
Well, I think unfortunately that is about all the time we have for today. Can you let everyone know where they can find you?
Sure. My website is nobleenergywellness.com. And for any of the listeners who go on the website, there is a four-world assessment right at the top, and it's free. And then you can schedule a time with me to go over it. And the
Perfect.
four-world assessment breaks down the mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical, and is an assessment of how balanced you are in all the
Mhm.
worlds. So it can be very powerful in guiding you within your own feedback
Right.
to what you need to do to rebalance within yourself.
Beautiful.
I am going to be doing a master class on the 18th of June
Okay.
from 1 o'clock, probably for 4 hours. And it will be on the four worlds.
Okay. Perfect. That is a question that I was going to ask after we wrapped up. So thank you for that. And where can they find that masterclass?
I will be posting and sending out emails. So if anybody wants to know, just email me and ask, and I will put you on the list to be notified.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for being here, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending this time with us on Just the Who of Us. We hope today's conversation offered reflection, comfort, or a moment of clarity. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with someone who may need it. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you're not alone in the journey.